Okay, quick pop quiz. What's the biggest hormone, the number one hormone that you need to watch out for at age 40 or over? So I know you may be listening and you're over 50, you may be over 60, and some of you I know are over 70, and we're going to keep getting older, by the way. This is the entire second half as we're flipping 50. But what's your answer to that? The number one hormone that you need to watch out for as a female over 40, what would it be? All right, so hold on to that answer. And I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, and most of all, though, hope to inspire you. And most recently, you may have heard that, if you listened to episodes a couple years ago, you heard me say struggles and concerns, but you didn't hear me say, but most of all, I hope to inspire you. Here's where that comes from. As I scroll through posts and timelines, and some of my friends and colleagues who also really are there for you as resources, offering value, offering nuggets and education for you, I often am disappointed by the amount of posts that are telling you that in menopause, you will gain weight, you will have hot flashes, night sweats, you will be more likely to be depressed. And honestly, reading all of those posts makes me depressed. And I want to finish every one of those posts and sentences for those quote unquote social media influencers by saying, unless you're prepared, unless you're already doing something to be ready for it, and you can say, ha, I saw you coming. Because listen, girl, this is not your mother's menopause. All we have to give that kind of information that you're going to be more depressed, you're going to gain weight, you're going to get belly fat, all we have is what happened in the past. We don't have what's happening in the future, and you and I are it. And if you believe you are probably going to put on weight, then you will. And no, I don't mean that you have to abstain from all the things you love, that you have to deprive yourself, or that you should. In fact, I do think that will backfire. The people who diet chronically, the people who over-exercise, the people who are restrictive, those are the people who are actually quite miserable. They may be thin or they may be fat, but they are, in both cases, miserable. So I'm looking not for middle ground. I'm looking for don't settle. We're not going to settle. We're going to find your personal blueprint. Your journey, my journey are not the same. Your hormones, my hormones are not the same at any given moment. But it is possible to feel good. So from that standpoint, I have with me an expert today who's no stranger to these parts, and she's back to talk about a brand new book. And listen, she's been a busy woman. She has birthed a literal baby, this book baby. I think she launched a program and she had a summit earlier this year. Talk about women who do too much or potentially overachievers, and yet she's doing it with calm and grace. And if you see her in social media, she's glowing. Mom looks good on her. So I'll let you know who that is in just a moment. Kat may already be out of the bag, but I also want to share with you, if you are still stressing, you're finding that the exercise you used to do isn't working and you have not yet done my 5-day flip, I want you to do it. And I want you to know going into it that not all exercise behind the scenes, behind the curtains where the Wizard of Oz lives, is as short or as gentle as this is. But sometimes you need a reset. You need 5 days where, yep, you're exercising, you're keeping consistency, because that is number one. And then we can always dial it up. But if you're not getting results and feeling better from what you're doing right now with your exercise, spend 5 days with me. And what it will do more than anything, total transparency here, is let you hear my voice, see me, hear how I give cues, and be able to decide afterward if you want to take a next step. Maybe you'll be feeling okay, this helps me. I get it. I get where you're coming from. I even understand how I might not have been doing certain exercises correctly. And thank you very much for the cues. I'm a cue queen, by the way. I want you to do it right, feel it in the right place, not feel it in the wrong place. But that's what I'd love. Whether you take a second step with me or not, you will know a little bit more and feel a little bit better about having stuck with 5 days in a row, potentially having more energy than you did when you started, and have a good idea of here's how I plan my week, because I'm showing you exactly how I plan my personal workout week and I plan my clients' workout weeks so that yesterday complements today and today complements tomorrow. We don't go randomly searching for workouts over here. We plan them. And yep, life gets messy. But when you have a plan, here's the rule of thumb. Structure gives you freedom. When it's on the calendar, you've got a plan, and that plan gets disrupted, it's easier to get back on track the day after or the week after. We know how it is. We know midlife. We are truly the sandwich generation. So we can do this. I'm going to put the link to the 5-day flip in the show notes, and let me introduce you without further delay to my guest today. Dr. Mariza Snyder is a functional practitioner, women's hormone expert, and the author of 8, yes, you heard it, 8 books. Her newest book, The Essential Oils Menopause Solution, I know you're listening now, so here we go, focuses on solutions for women in perimenopause and menopause, and her #1 best-selling book, The Essential Oils Hormone Solution, focuses on balancing women's hormones naturally. So you can see already why she's here. Dr. Marisa's other best-selling titles include The Smart Mom's Guide to Essential Oils and the DASH Diet Cookbook. For the past 12 years, she has lectured at wellness centers, conferences, corporations on hormone health, essential oils, nutrition, and detoxification. She's been featured on Dr. Oz, Oprah Magazine, Fox News Health, let's get that right, MindBodyGreen, and many publications. Dr. Marisa is the host of the top-rated Essentially You podcast with, by the way, 2.7 million downloads. You might want to check it out. Designed to empower women to become the CEO of their health. Check out our website, drmariza.com. I'll put that in the show notes because that's Marisa with a Z for women's hormone tips, including recipes and remedies. And we should mention she's also a new mom and she's doing all of that. So glad to have you here. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing great, especially talking with you.
And you've got that baby sleeping at night, or how's that going?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Not sleeping at night.
Some of us like hearing that because now it's like, okay, wish I had one of those. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember why that would be a bad thing for women in menopause for sure. Okay. I want to dive into, oh gosh, so many things regarding your books, but I really like to kind of start back at square one. Even though you're no stranger to this podcast, we love you over here and you know it. But I think it's always good to remind our listeners, like, why are you not a teacher or a lawyer or a plumber? Why are you doing this? What was the defining moment that led you to this as your passion and women's hormone health, specifically in perimenopause and menopause?
Mm-hmm. Well, the defining moment for me was when I was trying to wake up like we all do every single morning. We get up to do the work that we've got to do. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning. And I remember hearing my alarm go off, the little chime, and attempting to get out of bed and literally not even having enough energy to do it. It felt like there was like some invisible hand, some invisible monster just pushing me back into the bed. It felt like a really scary joke, I guess you could say, at the same time, like scary and a joke. because I wasn't able to even function. I remember crawling out of my bed to get to the bathroom, to get ready, and not even recognizing the stranger in the mirror and thinking to myself, if you can't figure out a way to take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of the women in your practice who are dealing with a lot of the same issues I was dealing with? And that led me down this path of what is going on with me, because at the time, a lot of the research, a lot of what was going on in the doctor's office and the medical offices just weren't addressing this level of chronic fatigue. And I remember finally going to the doctor, going to who was a quote unquote hormone specialist, because I absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, knew it was my hormones. And I remember getting my labs run. Everything was whacked out. Nothing was in a good place. Nothing was in balance, from cortisol to DHEA to testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, all of it. And she looked at my labs, confirmed, validated how I felt, but then handed me a script for Xanax for anxiety that I didn't have, and birth control pills to address the decrease in progesterone I was experiencing due to the level of stress I was dealing with. But that was it, and sent me out the door. And I remember feeling so dismayed and discouraged and felt so misunderstood in my journey that I had no desire to fulfill these scripts at all. And I remember sitting in my car that day, literally outside the doctor's office, thinking two things. One, I knew I had to figure this out. And I had been a biochemist for many years before I was a practitioner. So I knew I was a bulldog for research. I knew I had to. It was a non-negotiable. I got the answer from the doctor's office that was a whole lot of, we've got nothing for you. And knew if I ever wanted to be anywhere at the level that I was 5 years ago, and I was 30 years old, that I was going to have to figure this out. And then number two was that I knew that there were millions of women like myself, whether they were 20 years old or 40 years old or 49 years old or 52 years old, going into their doctor's offices and walking out with very similar recommendations. And I could not stand for that. I wanted to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And this happened to my sister. This happened to my mom. This happened to, so many women in my life, where we all came out of the doctor's office with the same recommendations. Whether I was 20 or whether I was 42, it didn't matter. It was all the same. And I knew that we deserved better. And I also knew that we deserved a real answer to what was going on with us.
Wow. What a story. I love that. And I don't love that it happened to you, but I love that you definitely had this foresight that, there's a better answer and I'm going to find it. Somebody's not going to hand it to me. We're going to do it ourselves. I love that. And basically looking at this, my next question may not to a listener sound like it makes a lot of sense, but I think now that it was as if for you, the doctor wasn't paying attention to you. You actually were. You knew it wasn't right, but the answer that they gave you was definitely even worse and not going to help. What now? Now that you've been serving women, what are the biggest hormone imbalances that you see women not paying attention to?
And I wouldn't say that, we're not necessarily paying attention to it. I would say that we just don't recognize that we don't match the symptoms up to the hormone imbalance. And I think because, Deborah, you and I, we've spent a lot of time understanding, researching, reading about the endocrine system, and really understanding how our delicate and complicated endocrine system works. But, for everyday people who've got a lot of things going on and they know their own specialty, diving into the many charts of how hormones work and the hormone pathways and the detox pathways, it's enough to give someone's head a big spin around the block, right? And so it's understandable that we're not connecting the dots to what we're feeling and it being a hormonal imbalance. But with that said, the things that I see the most is going to be a deregulation of cortisol, which is our survival hormone. The number one job of cortisol is actually to counter-regulate insulin. And then another big one that I see because of the dysregulation of cortisol which again, driving because of even the pandemic, the stress, the overwhelm, the burnout. Cortisol is the main orchestrating hormone for all of that. And when we're bombarded with so many everyday stressors, like the text message that your grandfather is in the hospital, or the text message that your grandson was in a car accident, or the text message that you are late on a deadline at work. You think about those are, just the messages that we get every day, the little fires that we're having to put out. That's driving a stress response system that is having a profound impact on our endocrine system and showing up in exhaustion, brain fog, cravings, burnout, inability to sleep at night, inability to wake up feeling refreshed in the morning, right? All of those symptoms are a sign of a hormonal imbalance. The next one I see a lot of is insulin resistance. Whether we're eating excess sugar because we don't know it, because it's disguised in our food, or we're eating it because we're craving something to keep us going in the middle of the afternoon, knowing that we have a long night ahead of us, or that we may be emotionally eating on accident because we are dealing with so much stress and overwhelm and anxiousness. So insulin resistance is a big one, especially in perimenopause and menopause. The onslaught of all that stress, plus the fact that as progesterone and estrogen begin to wane and drop, we have our estrogen protection, our insulin protection is diminishing. Our metabolic flexibility is shifting. So insulin resistance, which causes inflammation in the body. And then the other big hormone imbalance that I see for us as women is going to be potentially thyroid issues. Often if you look at symptoms for perimenopause into menopause and you look at low thyroid function, they are very identical. And I think it's one of the things that we're just missing a lot is we're not testing women for their thyroid. We're just chalking it up to good old aging and menopause, and we're not looking deeper into what's going on. So those would be the three kind of biggest hierarchy of hormones that I see. And then we've got progesterone and estrogen. They are designed to decrease, but that doesn't make it any more fun knowing that that they're decreasing in their function and their role in our body. But sometimes, pair a decrease in progesterone and estrogen with environmental factors, and it feels like just a hot mess wild ride, and I think that's the other big one. And I think a lot of women think that the decrease in progesterone and estrogen is a hormonal imbalance. And in some instances it can be, especially early in perimenopause, but they're designed to do that. Again, when we pair it with those other things, it feels like a hormonal imbalance.
Yeah, such a great point. Love that. And love that you really defined the hormone hierarchy and what needs to be on our radar and why. If you could, just for a woman who's listening, what are personal self-care things that you would recommend a woman do? The first one or two things that you would recommend she look at, in order to do as much good as she can, although she may even need help and a boost with hormones. What would you tell her?
Mm-hmm. I want to start by saying that I think we got to address the stress piece because I think it's one of the biggest root causes. But here's the thing about stress is it's insidious in nature. And what I mean by that is it's invisible. It's really hard to notice, especially if you are a woman handling business, which I'm talking to you right now. That's exactly who you are. You are a woman handling business. You are not just handling your business. You're handling everybody else's business. My mom this week alone is just a great example. My grandfather just turned 90. My grandparents have been locked in their house since the beginning of the pandemic. My grandmother is so afraid of dying of COVID, and they have shut themselves off to the world. We're not allowed in the house. We haven't been allowed. I went to visit them this weekend with the baby. It's their first great grandbaby. It's their first great grandson or grandbaby. And in Catholic religion, especially Mexican descent, sons are a big deal. And he's the first one, and they wouldn't let us in the house, my husband and I in Kingston. And it's because my grandma is so scared. So my mom, my grandfather's become very sick. My mom's been having to manage his care via phone. It's just a lot of stress. And every day we're getting these crazy updates on his health and his situation. hence the text message about the grandfather that I mentioned earlier. I got one of those yesterday. And then my sister's having struggles, and my uncle had a heart attack and a stroke this summer. My mom literally took over his entire care and took care of him once he came home, because he had to relearn how to function. And then she's got a grandbaby. She's got a brand new grandbaby, her first, and she wants to be the best grandma in the world. And that's just family. That is just family. My mom is in menopause, rock star, and that is just the family obligations that she's dealing with on the weekly. That's not everything else, right? And we know there's so much more. And so the stress response system is the one thing we've got to really address. But oftentimes we don't even know it because we're just in it. We know what exhaustion feels like. We know what brain fog feels like. We know what a hot flash feels like. Those are disruptive symptoms that we can pinpoint. We know what a migraine feels like, but we don't know what stress feels like. And I think that first step is beginning to recognize the cues around stress. Or if you're like, I have no idea, I just do the things I do every day. I check the boxes. I eat when I can eat, and I go to bed when I got to go to bed. I think it's important to have like a little chime on your phone, something that goes off every hour that gives you an opportunity to reset. Because so often enough, when we've got so much going on, especially as we're coming out of this pandemic storm, we don't even recognize when we're in that state. We don't recognize when our family is responding to us because they're kind of afraid and they're walking on eggshells, or that we don't notice how tight our jaw is or how tight our shoulders are, right? Because we're just in this state of kind of handling business. And so having a chime on your phone where it goes off and it's a nice chime, like, an ocean, waves crashing, or a creek, or something beautiful, not the dogs barking or the siren going off, because that's just going to put you into a stress state anyway. Something nice. And then take a moment, go out of the chair that you're in, go stand, maybe even go outside and take 3 to 5 deep belly breaths. And that will shift your state. That's the first thing I recommend, is just learning how to shift your state out of that state of constant doing. Then the next thing I would recommend is adopting in a morning routine and an evening routine, if you can do both. Morning routines, grabbing an essential oil like a citrus oil or a peppermint oil that can just uplift you and give you a little bit of extra energy, just make you feel good. Having a journal, a gratitude journal. And one of my favorite evening routines, because today I've got a baby who wakes me up many times during the night. And usually when I go to bed, he's in his bassinet in the bedroom. So I have to tiptoe around the room. Very different life than I had 5 months ago. And so I have this beautiful round crystal. It's a rose quartz crystal that's on my bed. And I don't have to make any noise to grab it, because he's sleeping peacefully. I grab that rose quartz crystal and I hold it and I list off all the things that I was grateful for that happened to me that day. No matter what day I had, there's always so much that I'm so grateful for. And usually even halfway through this gratitude, a moment that I'm having with my crystal, I fall asleep in the middle of it. Every single night, I fall asleep in the middle of this gratitude experience. And the crystal, my husband finds it in the bed every single evening when he comes to bed. But at least that's a ritual that I'm doing that I can do even as a brand new mom, to just bring in heart coherence and to bring in that good gratitude energy that's fueling my body before I go to bed at night. But I think having these types of practices where we are going inward and recognizing what a gift life is, what a gift our body is, and nourishing our bodies, whether it's a cup of tea at night or in the morning, or a cup of coffee, whatever it is, a little walk outside in nature. These are the ways in which that we can punctuate our life, punctuate our time throughout the day that keeps us out of this stress response mode and back into being attuned to our own health and energy.
Love that. Love those very actionable items too, and specific illustrations. For listeners, we've thrown out a couple terms, and I want to just go back and listeners are not new to this, but the words insulin resistance and I also want to hit on metabolic flexibility. Let's just refresh everybody and make sure that everyone is kind of acknowledging what is that and why is that, remembering that any one of us listening might be in brain fog right now. Go ahead.
Oh, I have baby brain. I mean, oh my God, or mama brain. Half the time I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm kidding, but I didn't think it was real, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. So what I mean by metabolic flexibility is our ability to use the food that we eat. So when we eat food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that we are eating, mind you, being mindful of the type of food that we're eating, that we're getting the most max of energy, but that goes through the digestive system, hits the bloodstream, we take it into the cells, our cells leverage that the micros, the carbohydrates, the healthy fats, the protein sources, and we're able to transport that into energy. And now quick that we can do that, and we can transform those calories into energy, into actually you and I having this conversation, me moving my hands as I'm having this conversation, me being able to carry that baby after this conversation. All of that requires energy, and how fast we burn it, that allows us to stay, we've got great tone, we're slim, we've got energy. And to me, it's really an indication of great energy, right? And over the years, especially however lifestyles we have, the stress that we're experiencing, the foods that we're eating, and whether how well our hormones are functioning, even estrogen and progesterone play a role in metabolic flexibility. And we know that we also lose, and you talk about all of this on your show all the time, start to lose muscle mass, which is a big, big part of our metabolic flexibility. The more muscle mass we lose, we're not able to bring in that glucose. We're not able to drive that metabolic behavior. It starts to all decrease over time, and we really begin to see it. I would say some women start to see it as early as mid to late 30s, especially hormone driven. And then definitely a lot of us are feeling it and experiencing it in our 40s, and into our 50s. And so one of the things we want to make sure is we're maintaining that metabolic flexibility, and flipping 50 is such a big part of that, right? It's about everything that you do, Deborah, is about strength training those muscles, making sure that we're working out when our cortisol is at its highest, so we're not depleting ourselves, and then eating the right foods to really nourish that metabolism versus dampening that metabolism. So that's metabolic flexibility in a nutshell. Then we've got insulin, which is a big part of our metabolism, right? I eat a green smoothie. I drink a green smoothie like I had this morning. And we know that there's going to be berries in there. There's going to be sugars. Fructose is broken up by the liver and then hits the bloodstream. Our cells, hopefully our muscles, are taking that glucose in, and it's insulin that's signaling the cells to do so. Insulin's like, hello, there is sugar in the blood and we got to get this out ASAP. And so it tells all the cells to do that. But over time, if we're constantly triggering that insulin, release, our cells get sensitive to it because they're just like, whoa, this is a lot of sugar. What if this is a stranger danger moment? If I have too much sugar in me, maybe this is going to be a problem. So cells stop receiving the signal of insulin, and they stop uptaking glucose. And then we developed insulin sensitivity, which leads to inflammation. And we're talking about a number of inflammatory issues. Cardiovascular disease as the number one, because it's the number one killer for women, especially after we lose those protective hormones of estrogen and progesterone. Also dementia, Alzheimer's, obesity, belly fat, cravings, brain fog, low energy, mitochondrial dysfunction. The list goes on and on, autoimmunity. Right. And so that can happen when we get insulin resistance. And unfortunately, the majority of women today, especially with the stress and the amount of excess carbs and the lifestyle strategies that we're using and how we're working out, all of that plays into insulin resistance. And I would say that if we took a swath of women right now, let's say 1,000 women, I would say about 800 of them would show some signs of insulin resistance after the age of 40.
Scary odds right there. Yeah. And okay, so let's talk about what are some potential solutions. So some supplements or food recommendations to help get insulin back in balance?
Absolutely. I would say the first recommendation is to reduce our amount of sugar intake. Be looking at where our sugar is. Sugar is hidden. It could be hidden in your coffee, with a creamer and a little sugar here, a little sugar there. One of the first things I always recommend is just swapping out what goes into your coffee. Instead of sugar, use cinnamon. Instead of a processed creamer, use organic coconut milk or almond milk. Or nothing at all. There's lots of different ways that we can do that, opposed to, using a half and half or something like that. So there's lots of different ways that we can kind of sub out, but I would take a look at what you're eating and look at where the sugar is. That's going to be a huge, huge player here. But then also be looking at how you're working out. You and I talk a lot about this. I've had you on my show on the Essentially You podcast about the type of exercise that will support our metabolism versus damage our metabolism. And that is weight training, and we're talking about 20 to 30 minutes of weight training. If you're looking for videos, Deborah's got them all on YouTube. Go check it out, right? For me, even when I was pregnant, I wasn't running. I wasn't on a bike machine. I was lifting weights because I knew that during pregnancy, insulin resistance is a guarantee. And at 40 and pregnant, it's a mega guarantee. My doctor even told me, she's like, when you do the glucose test when you're pregnant, she's like, you're going to fail. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're going to fail. She's like, most women have insulin resistance by the time they're 40, and pregnancy drives insulin resistance because of the hormone shifts. She's like, so the odds of you actually passing this test is pretty much zero. And I will tell you, I passed that test.
I know, right? Don't tell me no, right?
But it was really fascinating to me that they knew this, that she knew this, and yet we still just watch and observe until we see the hemoglobin A1C marker go up above 5.5, or until we see the fasting blood glucose hit 110. That's when we start to actually, it's when the medical system decides to step in, is when a medication intervention is necessary,
Ugh.
So yes.
Yeah.
And then nutrient deficiencies, clearly B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, a lot of these things we can measure, super, super critical, but exercise and what we eat is going to be the two biggest markers for getting yourself back out of a state of insulin resistance and prediabetes.
So good. Okay. So I'm waiting because I have my copy. I have my own private copy. Can you tell listeners about your new book, The Essential Oil Menopause Solution?
Absolutely. Well, I first want to just point out the fact that in the US alone, there are 75 million women in perimenopause and menopause. And you think about those years in our 40s and our 50s, because girl, you and I are rocking those years right now. And that's when I think women are doing the biggest things. It's also when things are really shifting in our bodies and we're stepping into a new transition. And the way the culture paints it, it's not so pretty. But I believe that these are our best years. These are when we know we have the most wisdom. We can really understand our body's wisdom, and we can really take massive ownership in what we want to accomplish, what we want to achieve, how we want to feel. And I think once we decide to take ownership in that, and we decide to be the CEO of our health and really of our life and destiny, we really get to navigate this so differently. We get to own that wisdom. So this book is called The Essential Oils Menopause Solution. It's specifically geared towards women in perimenopause and menopause, because I feel like a lot of us thought that menopause was technically the symptoms of perimenopause. So I wanted to really be clear on what was going on in those phases of our life. And it addresses not only the why behind what's going on with our bodies, the hormonal imbalances, everything that's happening, what's driving that too, because we deserve to know what's going on with our body. But then detailed, research-backed recommendations from herbs to supplements to nutrition, self-care, lifestyle, movement, even essential oils, all of it. Packed into one, all researched. And then there's a 21-day program that puts it all together that is just designed to implement with so much ease and grace. So I would say that this is one of the most comprehensive books out there on the topic because I read every single menopause book on the market. And so I'm really excited for this book to be out in the world. It'll be out very soon. I don't know when this is going live, but April 20th. And it's by far, of the 8 books that I've written, it is my best book to date.
That says a lot because I've seen them all. So, so excited for this book and for listeners to get it into their hands. So again, I can't say enough about the abundance of content and information and knowledge that you've shared in basically this little library that you have accumulated now, but you keep drilling down. I mean, you keep going next level. And this one, listeners, is for us. So I also want to kind of wrap up with this because you have an amazing gift. You come bearing gifts. How nice for our listeners. Your top supplement bonus guide to address the most common nutrient deficiencies that contribute to those hormone imbalances. So tell us more about that and then tell us where we can go get that.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, as much as I love all the fruits and vegetables, all the great, yummy, nutritional foods that we get to eat on a daily, unfortunately, we don't get enough of the nutrients that we need. And especially for women, because we are all things to everybody, we burn through a lot of supplements all the time. We burn through a lot of our nutrients. So a majority of us have nutrient deficiencies, including me. I had some massive nutrient deficiencies and I was taking a multivitamin. Like I thought I was doing all the right things. And so this is what I consider to be the most common nutrient deficiencies I see in women across the board. Like we're talking about 86% of us, and some of the best herbs to address some of the biggest symptoms that we're dealing with during perimenopause and menopause. And so I love this guide because it was such a big eye-opener for me. And I hope it's a really big eye-opener for everyone listening right now.
So love that. And thank you again for your generosity. Love, love, love. And okay, so let's say it one more time. Where should listeners go to learn more about the book?
Yes. Well, it's on sale on Amazon right now. That I know for sure. I love you, Amazon, for having my books on sale because they're not on sale anywhere else. So it's on sale on Amazon right now. So the best place to get it if you're looking for a discount there. It's on Audible too. I did it Audible, Kindle, all of it. And you can go if you want the bonuses. It's eomenopausesolution.com. I have this amazing $500 worth in menopause toolkit that's designed as a companion for the book, which is really amazing. And then you can catch me and Deborah on my podcast because I've had Deborah on a couple times. I just love you so much on the Essentially You podcast.
Fantastic. Okay, listeners. So I've got you covered. I know you are lifting, you're walking, maybe you're commuting. We're not doing so much of that anymore, but that will come. So I've got all the links in the show notes, and you'll find that at flipping50.com/EO menopause for the show notes for today. All the links to get the book, that special gift that she's got for you, and where to connect with Dr. Marisa at all her social media links, because she's got some gems there every single day that you do not want to miss. Thanks again, Dr. Marisa, for being here. I didn't hear a peep from that baby.
I heard a little something just a second ago, but I'm glad you didn't hear it. He is finding his voice right now.
As he should. All right, listeners, I hope we answered your questions and inspired you and gave you some places to go and get the knowledge that you deserve to know. And you can, again, ask questions or leave your comments at flipping50.com/EO menopause. What are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.